Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is a woman on a mission. Her name is Sararh Elliott of Barton. She is on a mission to educate people about dwarfism. Welcome to the show, Sararh.
Thank you.
Well, this is kind of a different topic, dwarfism.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll start by telling you like my whole story. I was born 25 years ago with a form of dwarfism called hypochondroplasia. It's milder than the typical dwarfism that you find,
Right.
but there are over 200 types of dwarfism. When I was born, my parents were told about this, and then that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I also had clubbed feet, so I had surgeries and treatments right off, starting when I was 8 months old. And then I was referred to Shriners Hospital, where I was a patient for like 17 or 18 years. And things would just continue to happen. My knees would bother me, my hips would bother me, everything, like my lower extremities have always caused me pain. I've had many surgeries. And then I turned 21 and they were like, this is a children's hospital and you can't come here anymore, basically. So I moved on to Dartmouth and they referred me to a joint replacement specialist, and in 2011 I had both of my hips replaced. It was the first time he had done a surgery on a person like me,
Right.
because generally they're older people, or the youngest he had ever done was like in their teens, but he had never seen anything with my type of bones,
Right.
and it was quite difficult. And the LPA, which is the Little People of America, they are the organization that is all about dwarfism. I wrote their mission down, and it's about, they're dedicated to improving the quality of life for people with dwarfism, and just, bringing awareness in how these individuals are affected by certain issues, but they're still just human, they're just small.
Right.
And I never knew about this organization, and when I was 19 they came to Burlington, and I still was just not interested. I went and I was like, oh, this isn't for me. I was a teenager and I didn't know what I was doing in life.
Right.
So last year I just started noticing more about people staring and kids staring, and I worked as a substitute a lot, and kids would just, I feel like it was all in my head that kids were bullying me or harassing
Right.
me, but they probably just don't know.
Right.
And when you don't know something, you want to know about it, so you tend to make things up and to fill what you think. They thought I was in second grade, but
Right.
I was their substitute teacher, so they didn't understand. So I started to get more involved with LPA. I looked it all up on the internet again. It's lpaonline.org or .net. And I saw they were coming to Burlington again.
Mm-hmm.
So I told my mom, I said, Mom, we have to go to at least some of the events. So we did go to that. And I said, okay, next time they have spring regionals and fall regionals. So I said, let's go to the spring regional. Let's book the hotel. Let's go. It's a weekend event in North Conway, let's go. So I went, and I was so nervous leading up to it. Getting there, I was just very, very nervous because I'm a tall little person,
Right.
and it's kind of like an oxymoron. But most of them are at least a foot shorter than me.
Yeah, because you're...
I'm 4'8".
Right.
So these individuals are 3 foot, 4 foot tall, and they are parents. They're business people. They run this organization, and they're smaller than me, and I find life difficult, and I could just imagine how it is for them, and that's why I wanted to go and find out. And so the second night of the conference, there was a dance, and like this is a moment that like will always stick out for me. We had a banquet, and then we had the dance, and I didn't understand the significance, but the DJ started playing music, and I don't know if it was ironic or just what it was, but it was One Direction, What Makes You Beautiful. And I just started crying. All these children got up and were dancing and just they didn't have a care in the world. And the song, I mean, I was tired, and the song and the overwhelming feeling of this all happening was so amazing that I just sat there. I sat there and I just watched these kids that have this amazing support group that I never had. And I mean, I went through life, I survived life, and now as an adult I'm finding difficulties, but how different would my life have been if I had had the LPA since I was an infant? And there were people there that they're both average sized parents, and they just have a random child, which is what happened to my parents, just a random child with dwarfism, and they have nowhere to turn, so they turn to LPA. I think the reason behind that is internet, obviously. I mean, if you're told that you have something, you Google it. I mean, that's what everybody does, is you go to the internet. So when you Google dwarfism or anything, usually LPA is the first thing that pops up, and they tell you, you know, don't read the internet, go to LPA. There's real, correct information. So there's people that are looking at me and saying, you went for 25 years basically without this, and they just don't understand, because they would be, they couldn't turn to anywhere else. They didn't know what to do. And so I think back to my parents, and what did my parents do? You know, they had nowhere to turn or nothing to fall back on except for what they were told from the doctors. Now, I don't know if the doctors were not educated about dwarfism, or if they just didn't know, or if they just figured I was going to be okay, but no one ever told my parents about LPA. Even when I went to Shriners, I don't know if they just assumed we already knew LPA or what it was, but we never found out. So finding out about it and going to this event in March was life-changing. It was the most amazing feeling. And Sunday when we left, I mean, I told my mom all during the weekend, I've never felt more comfortable in my own skin and been able to feel like I'm accepted and that I'm going to be okay. And I mean, I've graduated from college, but I still felt as if I'm, you know, I'm not going to be able to succeed in life because I have all these boundaries. But I know now that I can do anything I want to do.
How did that make your parents feel to hear that meant so much to you?
My mom is a very emotional person like I am, and so she cried at the dance too, and then she left me alone for a little while, and we talked about it, and she just said, you know, I wish we would have known. And one of the things that happens when you have a baby with something wrong with it, I mean, there's nothing, well, it's not wrong, but a difference. My mother, when I was born, immediately thought it was something she did. And that's just a mother thing. I mean, I don't have any kids, so I don't know, but her whole life has always felt like it's something she did wrong. But it wasn't. It's just a random gene mutation. And the clubbed feet just randomly happens to anybody. Anybody can have clubbed feet. It happens with dwarfism a lot. But so me finding all this out and saying, you know, it's okay. I come for her and say, Mom, look at the things I've done in life and look at where I can go. So now that I have LPA, like she's behind me 100%. Go do it. You know, we'll sell the house. I mean, not that extreme, but she wants me to do what's going to make me happy. And my dad, he didn't understand at first because I've just always been Sarah. And for me to be identifying as a little person, he's like, I don't understand why these people are all smaller than you, Sarah, so why do you think you are one of them? And I said, because I am. I have a diagnosis, and regardless of my diagnosis, I am one of these people. I face these difficulties, and I finally have found acceptance in a group, and that's just, it's amazing. And so he's like, okay, you know, do what you gotta do. You know, I think it's great you're involved. So while I was at the conference, they said, you know, because some of my questions are, am I gonna pass this on to my children? What is, you know, what else is gonna happen in my life? I've already had joint replacements. What else am I facing? So they said, you should really go see a geneticist. So I got on the phone and I called Delaware, which was the closest I could find, and they said, you know, why, you know, you can't find anything closer. So I called Dartmouth and I said, do you have a genetic doctor to like somebody that does this? And they said, oh yeah. And I said, do they know about dwarfism? Do they specialize in this? And they said, yep. So I got an appointment. It wasn't supposed to be till August, and they had a cancellation. So I went a couple weeks ago, May 9th, and I made my mom come with me. And I had my appointment, and we talked about, all the other things in my life. And then the doctor came in and examined me, and she just kind of stood there and stared at me, and she looked at my fingers, my toes, my arms, and she was like, I am not convinced that it's hypochondroplasia. And at that moment, my life changed again. Like that morning I went in there extremely happy with myself and confident that I'm gonna, be okay. And then for her to say that, it was like stripping something away from me. The diagnosis I had, and I was beginning to educate people on and accept. I had accepted it, and now it was taken away. And I just, for a long time, I couldn't get over that. And so she said, you do have a skeletal dysplasia, but we're not sure what kind. So I had to have 20 x-rays that day, whole, like, head to foot. And their radiologist read them and couldn't figure out what it is either. So my x-rays are currently at the International Skeletal Dysplasia Registry, where that's all these people do is look at x-rays and decide. So it could be a couple of months. So as of right now, I don't have a diagnosis. For 25 years, that's why I say, I had hypochondroplasia for 25 years. I could still have it, but there's a few things that the doctor just is thinking could be something else.
But it would be another form of dwarfism.
Yes.
Right. In just sitting here listening to you, I have two sons, and they're a couple of years older than you. They were born with a condition where they were calcium deficient. It wasn't due to lack of calcium. It was a kidney dysfunction, and it ended up being cured. Call it a miracle, call it chance, but the treatment ended up being a cure. But during the process, to make a long story short, they almost died. And when they found the treatment that ended up being the cure, they warned us that there's a possibility that they could, in their words, these weren't my words, they could be midgets. And so for the first year, we, they had to measure them and everything, and they ended up being, I'm no giant. I think I'm 5'7", and I think they're like 5'8". So that, that we faced that as well, just differently. But that comes up with the term little people. Is that the appropriate word? Can we also hear the word, I guess midget is now?
Midget is a derogatory term to most people with dwarfism. I say most because there are people that are little people that, I say it's kind of like exploitation, but they go on shows and, it's a comical act about, midget wrestling, midget tossing, that type of thing. And for a long time, I was okay with the word. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I'm only 25, but 19, 20, I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just accept it. It's a word, it's whatever. But then it has been used in a negative way against me. Right. So after that, I said, I don't like this word, and whenever, I've done a lot with social media. If I see it, if my friends use it, I will just say that's not, you don't use that word, it's not appropriate. It's like using the N word, right, or, something like that. But there are people in the little people world that are okay with it. But it is derogatory, and a girl that's in the district, I'm part of District 1, Northeast Kingdom is District right. 1, and a woman in District 1, her daughter has dwarfism, and she wrote to Cane's, the pickle company, about changing their labels for the midget pickles. Right. And she's gotten so much backlash. Like, I follow her blog, and just people saying, well, did you give birth to a pickle? Like, no, you didn't. You gave birth to a person. But for her, advocating for her daughter is what she's doing, because her daughter's going to face it no matter what, so why not take it off the shelves? And Even now, whenever I'm in a pickle aisle, I look, and I still see it on other pickle companies.
Here's another question that comes to my mind is, there's a show called, is it Little People, Big World?
Mm-hmm.
How do you view shows such as that then?
It was from that show that I kind of learned of the LPA again. I had, when we first got the internet, I was like 15 or 16, and I started Googling stuff, and I just was like, oh, whatever. And then Little People, Big World came on, and I was fascinated in the little couple. And there's another one now, but with Little People, Big World, they mentioned LPA, and they go to LPA events. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to meet them, not just them, but I want to meet other people with dwarfism, because growing up, I never met, there was a woman in the area, and I never talked to her, but she was a little person, and I always wanted to, but I felt like it would be weird if I did that. But I never saw another little person until I went to an LPA meeting, and I think initially that's what scared me, is because I was so much taller than them. So I said, well, I can't be a part of this because I'm taller than them. And then I did more research, and there's, the type of dwarfism I have, the hypochondroplasia, men who have it can be, 4'11", 5 foot, but just because you're 5 foot doesn't mean that you have it. It's just, it's the diagnosis. Right. So I've been communicating with people on like Facebook, and I've met some people, and I've met people not in person that have the same kind of dwarfism as I do, and then going to the LPA meeting and seeing all the people with dwarfism and meeting them and talking with them. There was a woman much shorter than me, maybe 3 foot tall, and she had had a baby. And that was my question, is can I have children? Am I going to be able to carry a child? Most likely the answer is yes. But sometimes if you have 2 types of dwarfism that have a baby, it can be lethal. Right. So you have to be careful. Right. If I were to reproduce with somebody that has dwarfism, there's a chance it could be lethal and that my child wouldn't survive. But I mean, I'm not family planning, but eventually I want to know these answers now so that when it comes time, I know the things that I need to do. Right.
And is there, I believe on Little People, Big World, you have some of the children are born with dwarfism, mm-hmm. and some without. Mm-hmm. How is that determined? Is that I assume that's a genetic?
Yeah, and I don't really know the answer. 2 average size parents can have a little person child. Right. And then a lot of the families you see that have 2 little people parents do end up with a dwarf baby. It's dependent on the type. Mm-hmm. So until I know my actual diagnosis, if I have the hypochondroplasia, there's a 25% chance if I have a child with someone else that has the same diagnosis. And then the other condition that they're thinking I may have is called MED, and it's multiple epiphyseal dysplasia. So if it's that, then there's like a 25 or 50% chance that I would pass it on, or that I am a recessive carrier. So it was only my parents' combination that could make somebody with this happen. So I may be a carrier, but I won't pass it on, or something like that. But my parents were told that if they, this was 25 years ago, they were told if you have any more children and they're girls, they'll be like Sarah with that condition or worse. So my parents didn't have any other children. They just said, she's enough. But, they wanted to dedicate their time to me. And I never also considered myself to be a special needs child, but I was. Looking back, my mom didn't work from the time I was born until I was like 5. She was a stay-at-home mom, and my entire life, even today, I make her go to doctor's appointments with me just because she brought me to my appointments. And my dad came whenever he could. He always came when I had surgeries, but with only one parent working, my dad had to work. So he was there, he was supportive, and he always took time off when I had surgeries, which were, frequent.
But on the other hand, you've also gone on to graduate from college as well.
Yeah, I wanted to be a nurse my whole life. That was my goal, and it came from spending so much time in hospitals and seeing the nurses. I had one nurse, her name was Donna, and I loved her, and then I don't know where she went, but she was the best nurse I ever had, and I said, I'm going to be a nurse. I want to be a nurse. I went to nursing school, and everybody I talked to told me I wouldn't be able to do it. They said, you're not going to be able to do it. You can't physically do it. Don't go. You can't be a nurse. So I believed them. I changed my major 6 times. And then I left UVM, and I came home, and I said, what am I going to do with my life? I want to be a nurse, and everything I do is making me unhappy. I can't do anything. I went back to nursing school, and I went to nursing school, and I didn't pass. And I said, well, I guess I can't be a nurse. So I finished up my degree at Castleton, and I graduated with a bachelor's in social science. And then I came home and I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do in my life? I can't stand up for more than 15 minutes before I'm in pain. So there's a lot of jobs I can't do. So I did odd jobs here and there, and then I said, I could be a teacher. I think that I could be a teacher. So I started at Linden last year around this time to get my master's in education with teaching licensure. And then I got the job that I have, which is at Lake Region, and I love my job. I never knew it existed. I'm the community service coordinator, and it's amazing how everything is falling into line for me. So I'm still getting my master's, and I should be done with that in December of this year.
Well, that's impressive. All right, we have less than 10 minutes left. Now, you're also hoping to go to an event in later this month.
Yeah, at the end of June.
Right.
The LPA, in addition, the whole United States is broken up into districts. Right. I'm in District 1, New England's District 1, and then 2, 3, and so on. So districts have their own events, and because New England is so, I wouldn't say unpopulated, but Vermont is mostly unpopulated. There's a lot of presence of little people in Boston, and they have events, and then the whole nation does an event in an area. So last year it was in Texas, this year it's in Washington, D.C., and everyone at the conference that I went to in March said, have you been to a national? Have you been to a national? And I said, well, no, this is my first event. And they said, if you think this is amazing, there's about 200 people here. Nationals, there's about 2,000 little people. And they said, you really should go. And there's a medical advisory board that I could go and meet with doctors for free that specialize in the type of dwarfism I have, which right now I don't know what it is, but hopefully I'll figure that out eventually. But there's workshops on how to live, and I think it's directed more towards the smaller stature than me, but nutrition, pregnancy, reaching things, just living, and then you can meet other people that are experiencing the same things that you are, and that's what I want to do. I want to go. So my whole mission right now is to find sponsorship in the area, businesses, hospitals, anything, anyone that would like to sponsor me to go and become more educated. I'm educated because I have it and I've experienced life, but I want to become more educated on specifics, on actual real things that I can say, yes, this is how it gets passed on. Right. And I want to be a resource to this community so that if by chance somebody is born with dwarfism, they can say, well, we have a person in this area, here's her contact information, you can get in touch with her. And that's what I want to be to hospitals. And I would love to go around to the schools and speak about this and tell people, yes, I am an adult and I'm a small adult, and this is why. And I think that there's a lot of ways that this can be taken as far as bullying, sensitivity training, teaching about diversity. There's a lot of things that I could address, and that's my goal.
And when you talk about this community, your idea of community is the Northeast Kingdom and the entire state if need be.
Yeah. I only know right now of one other little person in the state of Vermont. I think he's 12 or so. He's from like the Burlington area, and he recently, like a year or two ago, went on WCAX because he was educating his school about dwarfism. And I haven't met him. I don't think. I'm not sure if he was at the conference, but I believe he's going to the national. And I think that the whole state needs to be educated. I mean, if somebody comes in and says, you know, I'm having a baby, and then they look and say, oh, you have dwarfism, the first thing the parent's going to do is Google it, and you're going to find some scary things on Google related to dwarfism, you know. So if you have an actual person that can come in and say, I've survived this, I'm, you know, 25 years old, I've gone to college, I have a job, I live my life perfectly fine, then having a contact. I mean, I wish, and this is something I wish I would have had growing up, is this group of people, and you know, I can direct them to the LPA, I can get them to meet people and direct to people, and that's...
You know, it seems like people feel really comfortable commenting on people's height, you know, whether they're short or whether they're really tall. And I don't think they really mean anything derogatory towards it. But do you find that people are just nonchalant about?
Oh yeah, yeah. I worked in Burlington when I was at UVM, and I had a gentleman come into the store I was at, and I turned around to help him at the register, and he said, well, you can stand up now. And when things like that happen to me, I don't have like a quick response, so I'm just like, yeah. But then afterwards I get so mad and I think of 10,000 things I could have said to him. But you're right, people comment on how short you are. I mean, I go out, I go anywhere, and people are like, oh my gosh, you're so small. And I just want to be like, duh.
But do you think their intention is to hurt you, or do you think it's just
they're just commenting?
Yeah.
And it's not to hurt anyone, but do you say that to people who are different skin color? You know, you don't go up and say, you know, you're an African American. You don't say that. You don't say it to somebody that is. There's things that society has learned not to comment on because it's not nice. And that's what the LPA is trying to do, is say there's no need to comment on my height because I'm a person. And a lot of the things, like the blogs I read, and something that I just came up with even on my own thinking it, and then I saw that I was actually right, is that if you need to call me anything, just call me my name. And it did come up one time at school when I was substituting. Students said, you know, who's that midget subbing up in art class? And it just so happened that my mom heard it. And my mom said things to that girl. I mean, it was in a school setting, and she said, I wouldn't say that to her because that's my daughter. And for me, that was when I started saying, I need to do something about this, because I can't go on in my life and say, you know, why couldn't she say, who's the girl subbing in art today? Why do you have to attach that word to me? You know, yes, I am short, yes, I am a little person, but why is it an automatic, the word midget? And if you look up the definition, it's this odd definition, and it's my goal to get people to not say it. If you need to comment on my height, you know, that word is just a not nice word.
Okay. All right. Now that we're ready to wrap up, first of all, I want to commend you. I think you're doing a great thing, and it was great that we were able to meet, because you know, our worlds kind of collided in different ways in the last few days. But how can somebody, you know, help you make this trip become possible?
You can get in touch with me. I am on Facebook, so you can find me, Sararh Elliott. In Barton, there's quite a few Sararh Elliots in the world, but or you can sponsor me monetarily, I guess is the word, and you can just send a check to me, and my address is P.O. Box 375 in Barton, Vermont, 05822. And I'm just collecting as much money as I can to put towards this trip. And, you know, if I have leftover money, or if I don't get enough money this year, it's just going into a savings for next year. And I'm not gonna just stop here. I need a boosting point to get there at this point in my life. But it's not something I'm just gonna stop at after going to this national. I want to use the national to become more educated so that I can educate the area.
Okay. Again, you're just so filled with energy, and I have no doubt you're gonna pull this off, and you are going to do great things. And I think you truly should be commended for stepping out and doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.